Welcome everybody to the Monday, October 16th meeting of the Medfield School Committee. We were just in executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining. If we were in an open meeting, it may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body. On the agenda tonight is public input, approval of minutes from September 18th. We have new business, which will include research and development presentations, approval of scholarship, appointment to the Tech Board of Directors, the fiscal year 19 budget calendar, and other items since posting on October 11th. For old business, we have our wellness policy and donations. For superintendent's report to the committee, we had the cleargov.com, the social emotional task force update, the Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention, the interface meeting and update, the director of student services search, and district recognition. Future agenda items will include the superintendent's goals and the student activity policy. We're so excited to have so many people here, so we'll start off with our public input. So if anyone wants to get up, the one thing is you have to use the microphone because of Medfield TV. Yeah, this is a good time to...
How much time do I have?
Oh, take as much time as you need.
It's a reasonable.
Yeah,
I think our regulations provide a reasonable amount of time.
Oh, good. I only have 85 slides, then. That's great. So,
Right.
Well, good evening. My name is Leo Brem. I live at 249 South Street. I have a 7-year-old and a almost 5-year-old, and my son is in the first grade. And I'm here to voice concern about the class size of the first grade. My son is in a class of 25. And in my professional experience, I am a 22-year educator, and the last 15 as a district-wide educator in both Sharon and Newton public schools, and most recently the Northborough-Southborough public schools. And class size always becomes an issue for us to address when it comes to budgeting and focusing our resources. And as you know, we live in a wonderful town, and we have a wonderful school district. And I would like to see class size become more of a priority in our budgeting and our priorities in the future. And I'm sure it may already be. And I don't want to undermine the efforts already underway by the administration. And I know Dr. Marsden and his wisdom as well. So I'd like to make sure that it was heard that we bring this further up on the agenda and perhaps a future agenda item where we could discuss research. I also was reviewing the school committee documents and noticed that the class size policy was missing under 2B, and I'm not sure the reason for that or if it's in committee and hasn't been addressed, but currently I do not see it posted on the website, but it was listed in the table of contents. So I know these are just wonderful documents that everyone loves to take care of in school committees, and the numerous school committees I've worked with and superintendents, trust me, we love talking about policy all the time. However, it does lead to guidance on our decisions as a community, and I look forward to seeing it on the agenda in the future, and I'm open to, obviously, counsel outside of this. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
Thank you, Leah.
Does anybody else
Who
want?
will? Sure. Nobody? Nope.
I just have one question. Hi, my name is Jennifer Hearn. I am the parent of 3 very rambunctious boys, 6, 4, and 3 years old. So I only have one in public school right now. He is in the first grade. He is on a 504, and he is in a class of 25 children, which is a very, very large class size for a lower grade, like first grade. Dr. Marsden, we spoke, you had mentioned for planning ahead. Next year, the addition of another teacher for the class of 2029 in the second grade to help with this issue, which the parents appreciate very much. My question to you is, the explanation for the increased large class size was for the unexpected 100 and plus kids who had moved to town over the summer.
Correct.
So we are addressing that by the hiring of another teacher for that particular grade for next year. My question is, well, that's happened once. What's the contingency if that happens again? What if we have another 100 kids who move in over the summer? Then the classes will still be large. So do you have a plan in place for that possibility, since it has happened and we don't want it to happen again. You know, you have the foresight now that you're able to make those preparations. Whether you have a plan or thought about it yet, I'd like to just put that on your radar. That is a concern of mine, and in general for the larger class population sizes. So
Yeah, so we had 60 new students over the summer at the Memorial School and in Wheelock School. So 40 at Memorial and 20 at Wheelock. So we were going into this school year projecting 21, 22, 23 tops in first grade, which still isn't great, but it was something that we thought we could get away with based on the lack of space we have at Memorial. So if we're going to do something in years going forward for the upcoming kindergarten and then looking at that same class in grades 2 and 3, we've got to make some really tough decisions as a school district. We have to look at things like, okay, we don't have enough room at Memorial, so we're going to add classes there. How many full-day kindergarten classes do we then reduce to open up space? Or do we keep that full-day kindergarten as is and take away an art room? Or do we take away a music room? We've already taken away a reading room this past year, and we have reading teachers in closets now. So it becomes a space issue, no doubt. The staffing issue, I think, is something that we've taken away the last 4 years, a teacher in each grade level with the group that's in grade 5 right now. So we'll just have to add those back as we go up. There's room in Wheelock and there's room in Dale for that. It's Memorial that's the issue. So going into this year, we knew there was a possibility there could be some problems with class sizes, but we had only had 8 to 10 every over the summer each year. This one was an anomaly, and it just got, a lot of people came in at once.
Okay,
So I know you and I talked about modulars.
Yeah.
We're not. That's not something we're
I
looking
don't
at
know.
right now.
It might be the first anomaly, I suspect, because, like I had said, the schools have done an amazing job, and that's why we're so high in the rankings. But that's also why so many young families
Of
with
course.
really young kids
Of
are moving
course.
to town. So
Right.
I have a feeling that it's not going to be an anomaly,
we have
and
the
it's
same
probably
feeling.
going to be the standard. So if it happened again this summer, and all those students, another 100 or so moved in, I'm just trying to understand what would actually happen. Is there just one teacher being hired, or would there be room for the addition of another second grade teacher if that population?
Yeah, we probably have room at Wheelock for
Influx.
that.
Do you know
But
what I'm
But we
saying?
need to take a look at projections. We'll get projections in December and January.
Okay.
And we'll look at those, and we base our budget on that. So we based our budget on 177 first graders. That was the numbers that we had in the projection. So it came in a lot higher than that.
But couldn't we possibly take that projection and add a couple, dozen
Sure.
students
And
in
I would-
order
so
to
I
make
would-
sure that this doesn't happen again?
I would encourage you, now
Right.
that you're engaged in this process,
Yeah.
that as we start the FY19 budget, and the warrant committee is telling us to reduce our budget, I would encourage you to be there for those meetings and advocate for our
Yes,
kids, because that's really important.
Completely understand that
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah, that's really
start
important.
here. It starts somewhere else. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
If I can just add to that, it does start here. I think that's a misconception, that it starts here with parents of these kids, because when we're in budget committee meetings and the warrant committee is telling us that, enrollment sizes are going down, we need you guys here to tell us enrollment isn't going down. We moved here for the schools, so. And believe me, I think most of us with now somewhat older kids were there. Like, it is really hard to come to a 7 o'clock meeting, to, have someone home while you're running out the door. But that's when we need people to show up also. It is really important, because we're not living it anymore when we have a first grader or kids coming up. But when you have 4 kids, first grade and under, those are the people that make a difference. So it does start here, and it continues into our budget season that is starting soon. So please keep that on your radar.
None of us are happy with 25 kids in class.
No.
None of us are happy with that. And, I was an elementary principal.
you.
I get it. None of us are happy with that number. But I think it's important, as I just mentioned to Jen, to get engaged in this budget process as we go forward, because everyone at this table and I have had numerous conversations last year with folks on the warrant committee that feel that 27, 28 is okay for elementary school. I mean, they feel that's okay. We don't feel that's okay.
No.
No one that's sitting here, educators feel that's okay. But I think that's, kind of the conversations that we have, and, no one thinks that that's good for kids. Everyone that is in education knows that every single body, whether you go from 21 to 22, 22 to 23, 18 to 19, every body makes a difference. And we realize that. And I think that, when we're looking at creating a budget and getting our initiatives and moving forward, that's what we preach and that's what we believe in. And, if you certainly, we'd love to have you help us along that way, because that's an important piece.
Yeah, and just to be fair to the warrant committee, the warrant committee is not the boogeyman.
No,
not
at all.
But it is, without question, other than town meeting, the most diverse board in town in terms of perspectives, in terms of socioeconomic background, in terms of age and experience. So you have a diversity of opinions represented there that you don't, here on this board, I believe we all care about education. We all had kids come through the school. We're all here for a reason. And the people on the warrant committee are there because they believe in the whole town. So they take not necessarily a different set of priorities, but they come at it a different way. And I think it is critically important to us to have your voices. We had a meeting last year where it looked like we were going to have to make a significant cut. And, teachers turned out in droves, and that helped us drive home the point of how important the position was we were taking at that point. And, so there are certain people on the warrant committee, and as you get more involved and pay more attention to what they are, it'll be evident whose positions are on which side. And especially when you come to our budget hearings, it's pretty evident, I think, when you're here. But that's really where the point has to be driven home. We do all think 25 is, and I apologize, the policy is not up there. We've been moving our policies online. I used to carry around a big binder of policies, and I'm sure you've seen them. And as we revise policies, we're moving them online. So some of them just haven't been revised in a long time and probably should be moved on anyway. But my guess is that's why that's not there. Not for any other reason.
Yeah, and I would say that the guiding document right now, when we look at class size, is the language in the teacher's contract. So the teacher's contract says no more than 25 in a classroom, where it's, where you can have that. And I think that's what we've always used as something that guides us. And again, elementary, we want to be in high teens, low 20s all the time. That's where we want to be, no doubt about it.
I'm sorry. I have one thing that I want to speak to, because I think we are all so used to having a public discourse right now on the internet, like concerned citizens and your class 2029 page. I know I have one for 26 and for 24. And it seems like we're having these great discussions, and you are. But I need an email from you. Dr. Marston needs an email from you. Because if I don't have the data that says that the incoming second grade class, or the incoming fifth grade class, or the incoming seventh grade class, or whatever, if I don't have that data that you have a specific issue that needs to have, resources assigned to it. I mean, we're up here making those arguments, looking at them, but if we don't have that data from you and your concerns, you could talk on Facebook like all day long, and it doesn't matter. So when you email me, or my phone number is still listed. I know.
You have a phone?
I have a phone. And once a week I clear it out from
all the CVS
all the
messages?
hang-ups and the CVS messages. But occasionally I get a nugget in which one of the people here has called me about something, and I always respond, and I know that all of us do as well. So please, I love Facebook, mostly because that's how I get my pictures up anymore. And I think it's a great place for discussion. School committee members can't and don't comment on Facebook posts. We just can't. And it's also, we need to have your input in real life, like you're here tonight. Mm-hmm. So please, email me, email Marianne, which is under the school committee banner on the school committee, or on the school district website. Mm-hmm. There is a school committee chair.
Yep.
Email.
I also have a phone that I actually use.
Right.
A phone still, like a dinosaur.
Right.
But I think you're making a good point that all of us are extremely accessible. I think.
Please.
And I I don't think in in my time, I've been volunteering since my kid was your kids' ages in the integrated program. I am always willing. I think most people here, I have never heard anyone say that they wouldn't talk to someone. Your concerns are important to us. We're willing to talk to anybody. We might not always have all the answers for you right away, but we'll talk to people and find out the answers. And sometimes not the answers you want to hear, but that's part of the process of working on things, which I think is extremely important.
Yeah. One of the other things I would say is that there are also avenues in which you can have more of a back and forth dialogue. There's the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, which is an open meeting that meets
Wednesday this week,
Wednesday this week.
9:30 at Blake.
Yep,
And then
I love a good
next
meeting
month
more
would
than
be at night.
anything. So you can get a lot of good information there about not just what's happening at Memorial, but also what's happening across the entire district. You're able to see you're able to see more of a higher level, and then see kind of where we're going, and see how that feels to you. Okay.
It is.
I just
It's
think,
it's a public meeting, but
It's not
as a lawyer,
right.
it's not subject to the open meeting law.
Right.
Correct, I don't have to post it.
It's just a public
It's
meeting.
just-
It's
yeah.
just a. It's you know what it is.
Open to
It's
the
a.
public.
It's
It's
a
not on the brand
dialogue
new
and an
bulletin
informal.
board that we put in town hall.
Correct.
Right. It's not it's an informal way that you can get information that you may not ordinarily be able to kind of see all the time, or really kind of get the tone of.
I just think as if we should do a future agenda item on that space issue, because it doesn't matter how many teachers we hire if we don't have a space to put
Right.
them. And I think there's a lot of options there, probably.
Go.
Well,
No quick questions.
Wait, somebody
Go.
else called that fine. Okay. Email, is that the best way, Bonnie?
Okay, so is emailing something that you need from us to get evidence to present to the warrant committee?
It certainly helps.
So you're encouraging, okay, right. I mean, it's a tricky dynamic because you could get a lot of emails.
Yeah.
But what can we do to support that? And then moving forward with the budget, getting information there as to what the plan is going to be to address it so that we can support that for the warrant committee meetings.
So I'll briefly say that I find anytime that I get a contact from any parent who says this is an issue, this is a problem, and wants to speak to me specifically about it, or we have a discussion about it, not just like, oh, my kid's got 20, this many kids in my class, but that we have a discussion about it, I keep a binder and I write that
Okay.
down.
So data
That's
is
what I do
important.
so that I can hand that on.
Okay.
However, whatever I say is technically hearsay until somebody gives me some data and some evidence. So, yeah, it is useful, and, it's electronic communication. It's not using up that many resources. If you're concerned, please tell us. Now, I'll let Jeff speak to the.
No, I think once we'll do the budget timeline this evening. We'll give you a pretty good sense of where we're going. You've been to meetings before as far as open, public hearings and all that. But then, in the interim, we'll have meetings with the warrant committee as we go through. And I think those are. I know some folks here went to the one we had last year, where it was at the police station, the public safety building, where Michael and I and members of the school committee. I think we answered 72 questions in PowerPoint form, which would allow everyone to see what we're doing and where the answers are, what the questions are. So we get that word out, I can get it out in either the blog or email or whatever, and have people come. But I think it's important that folks follow along with that process. Just because we may not be going for an override, sometimes people don't pay attention to that stuff. And I think it's important to try to get as much information as we can. One of the things in my presentation tonight is cleargov.com, which I'll show you. We're going to have it go live next week, and it will allow you to benchmark what we do versus like districts. So it'll give you a really good sense of where we are in terms of spending, class size, graduation rate, SAT scores, you name it. We've picked some peer groups and peer communities, but it'll allow you to see how we stack up. And those are the ways that we can see when we're asking for certain amounts. And you've seen in the presentations in the last few years, we've compared ourselves in terms of what tax bills are in other communities compared to what our community is, yet, you know, they're spending a lot more in education than we are, so where does that money go? And those questions are important to ask. You know, if we're being asked to continually cut our budget, then it's important to ask, well, where's that other stuff going? If we're paying more taxes than Sharon, yet they're spending more than us, and we're paying more taxes in Westwood, and they're spending more than us, and yet we get the same amount of state money, I mean, those are important questions to ask. So I think that this will allow folks to benchmark right off our website, go right on there, and you can look at what all these communities that I'm talking about, what they're spending in relation to Medfield.
But there's no substitute for showing up. Emails are not a substitute for showing up.
No.
Facebook, I'm not on Facebook. If you post on Facebook, I won't know it. And I'll tell you, I promise you, the people you want to reach in town who disagree with you are by and large, on this issue anyway, are by and large not on Facebook. So that's not activism, as I think was said. So, you know, there's no substitute for being here, hearing what we have to do. We are on TV. We'd love to have you to watch us on TV. I don't think our ratings are what they used to be. We used to beat Trump on The Apprentice, and now he's got a bigger platform.
It does good.
But-
YouTube, and most of it you can really just listen to. You don't have to watch.
I
So you
like
can
it's
do it while
dark
you're
so
doing
that it's
something
not
else.
reflecting off my bald spot. But people don't. I don't think people actually watch it. I mean, you can look and see people aren't
Well.
watching our meetings and aren't coming here.
Some of us
So
do, but we're a little geeky.
yeah, well, so you know, there is no substitute. Email is helpful, but there's no substitute for coming and expressing your views here and at every other meeting in town. I mean,
Yeah.
if you haven't been to a town meeting yet, I won't ask you to raise your hand because I don't want to shame anybody. But if you're not at town meeting every year, you're just wasting your time.
Thanks.
I do think it is true that, and this will be my last little tidbit of advice, if I can. I think it really is eye-opening, and I can remember back when I was a younger parent. I like to think that it isn't that long ago, but
Oh, it's long ago.
yeah, it's pretty long. It's pretty long. But, you know, when your kid is in the first grade, and as it should be, that is the biggest thing in the world. And it should be, because that's your child. And obviously, we wouldn't be up here volunteering our time if we didn't think that's the most important thing. But it is so eye-opening to listen to the warrant committee when they have so many, you know, you've only got a certain piece of the pie, right? You only got a certain amount of pie. And all these different town groups and pieces need some of that pie. And granted, we're definitely the largest piece, so we continually are, you know, working with the warrant committee to continually improve our budget for what we feel like we desperately need. But I think that when you go to these meetings and you see all the different competing needs of the town, it is very eye-opening as well. So that would be my little piece of advice, that it really is good to get informed about all the different things that are happening in the town that are competing for this very limited amount of money. So,
Yeah, there are a lot of wait, what
yeah.
moments
Yes,
Where-
yes.
where you're like listening to things and you're like, wait, that
Right.
magnesium treatment
Right.
plan?
Well, I
What?
mean,
I
even
don't
the
know what that
ALS issue last year, it was a
Right.
massive issue. So if your kid is the kid that has an allergy issue, that's so much more important than the kid who's sitting there with 25 kids in your class, right? Because if you're the allergy parent, you're thinking, and I got those phone calls, that what if it takes 9 minutes? My kid doesn't have 9 minutes for someone to show up. I mean, those are some of the things that they're talking about. So all of a sudden, the fact that your kid is in a 25-kid classroom doesn't seem so bad if there's a kid who could have, you know, some kind of anaphylactic reaction and wait 9 minutes for an ambulance. So those are some of the different things that you have to struggle with, and I'm sure the warrant committee does as well. So it is just good to be informed and to go and to get yourself informed about some of these issues. So,
We're in
so
this
on that,
together. One
yes,
big
we
plan.
are. So, oh yes, please.
My name is Lindsay Rogers, and I don't like speaking in public, so I don't really want to be here, but I feel like it's necessary. So I wrote a little something so I can read it, so I'm not too nervous. But I do want to say that I've been to warrant committee meetings, and I go to the town meeting, and I go to the PTO meetings, and I'm on the PTO, and I'm really active. And I think all of those things that the warrant committee has to deal with are really important. I thank you for your guidance about where we need to be vocalizing our concerns and our support. So I'm going to talk to the warrant committee because I'm sure they're like watching right now and they can kind of hear why we think this is an important issue. So I have a daughter in first grade and a daughter who will be in kindergarten in 2 years. I'm a speech language pathologist. I speak to little kids, so it's okay. I'm a former special education team chairperson, and I've worked in several Massachusetts elementary schools. I echo the concerns about class size that other people have spoken about tonight. With the addition of a new student today, my daughter's first grade class has 25 children. I want to thank the first grade teachers and Dr. Martis for advocating for an additional aide for the first grade this year, and thank Dr. Marsden for finding funding for this additional staff member. At this point, my concern is the long-term plan for this large class, as well as the future large class, any future large classes. Thus far, we've had the pleasure of getting to know 3 of the classroom teachers at Memorial, from the integrated preschool to first grade. All of them have been amazing and they've far exceeded our desire for a competent teacher for our daughter. All 3 teachers are truly passionate about teaching. They hold multiple degrees, and from what I can see as a parent, use evidence-based teaching strategies. But beyond that, which we can see in the academic performance of our daughter, these teachers have made school what it should be, an exciting and a safe place to learn. In preschool and kindergarten, our children had the benefit of relatively small classes and 2 adults in the classroom to guide them through not only challenging assignments, but also help to navigate what I and other professionals call the hidden curriculum. And those are those school expectations that are not necessarily explicitly taught. And if they're not mastered, they can affect students' academic, social, and emotional well-being. Our teachers in the early grades are so focused on helping young children interact positively in this new school environment, and they spend hours each year working on developing coping strategies for students feeling overwhelmed with tasks, assignments, and social interactions. My fear is that these large class sizes, the teachers will be spending considerable time differentiating instruction to many levels and many different types of learners in each class, and that they will have less time to focus on helping the students become independent, creative thinkers who can navigate the increasingly stressful academic years, which, to your point, we know that they're only in first grade and that it's not the biggest thing in the world, but there are bigger challenges ahead. So please consider the importance of smaller class sizes to the academic and emotional success of our children. So, sorry about my quivering voice, but
No.
You can't tell from your
Very,
answer.
very well spoken.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Sure.
The longest public participation I've ever seen.
Right. I love it. I feel like I come in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk to some empty chairs and
Jerry's
hopefully
always here.
be-
I
Jerry is
try, I
always
try.
here.
Sometimes I have a life, but so Jerry Potts, 7 Curve Street. So actually kind of following, I mean, we've talked a lot about the stress on students, and I have a 24-year-old and a 20-year-old who made it out, and it seems like every year I still have a 16-year-old who is a junior, and it seems like the stress is getting more and more at each level for the students. But I also worry a lot about the size of the classes and the stress on our teachers. And I feel, especially coming into a collective bargaining period of time where things can get adversarial, that I just want to strongly advocate that our teachers are probably the most important resource we have. I looked at the teacher contract, and half of it, and it's state mandated, is teacher evaluation. And you've got 70 different processes that the state now wants teachers to go through to be evaluated, on top of them caring about those 25 students that are in the class. So I'm hoping, as a community, in addition to the warrant committee and the stress that's being put on our students today, which is, we can see it evidenced in a whole bunch of ways, and I kudos to the administration for all the good work that they're doing to try to address that. It's appreciated. But I also feel like we're seeing record levels of stress at teacher burnout, teachers being pulled in so many different directions. And I hope, as a community, in addition to going to the warrant committees to advocate for our students, that we advocate strongly for our teachers. They are amazing. I feel blessed that we've had 3 kids through the public schools that have had teachers that have gone above and beyond. And it seems like every year their job gets harder. And if you look at the number of college students who are not going into education because of what they're facing. It's a shame because we're losing some great people who really care, who would benefit our kids. So as a community, I think we do a pretty good job, but in a year where contract negotiations are going to come up, I really want to advocate for our teachers. So that was it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry. Okay, does anyone else have anything? Well, thank you all very much for coming and voicing your concerns. And so we will move on to the approval of the minutes for September 18th.
Madam Chair, I've reviewed the minutes of the regular meeting and the executive session for September 18th, and I recommend they be approved. I move that they be approved as submitted.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And so for new business, we have the research and development presentations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So once again, we have a whole group of teachers here to do some presentations on some of the great work they did all summer. Now, some people think teachers have the whole summer off and they rest and relax, but our teachers continue to work hard in the summer, do some really good work. The R&D, we started doing these presentations a couple of years ago just to showcase some of the great work our teachers are doing. So always proud of what they do. And Kim, can you start us off? Kim Cave, and then we have, I think, 6 presentations this evening. So we appreciate them coming out this evening and doing this.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to see so many people because this is our annual R&D celebration, I like to call it. This year we were able to fund 58 R&D proposals for about $60,000. And if in a perfect world, all 58 would be presenting tonight, but it's already getting late, so we had to pick and choose. I do just want to make a quick comment that I think having the strategic plan made such a huge difference in the types of proposals that we had, to have those connections and for people to really have a clear sense of the direction the district was going, helped them make some really interesting proposals. I tried to pick things that hit upon all the different domains in the plan, but that in a perfect world it didn't quite pan out the way I had hoped. But we have 6 amazing presentations that cover pre-K to 12. And we're going to start us off with the one and only Gail Duffy, who is actually representing the entire English department, grades 6 to 12. You're going to fill us in on all of the R&Ds that happened over the summer for your department.
Well, hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody. First, I'd like to say thank you, both to Kim and, what? Oh, didn't change. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
Sure, if you just want to
Yeah, we'll
move
move
on.
on.
Yeah, why don't-
Okay,
Yep.
so why don't, we're going to move on to some official business while they're handling this little blimp in the road. We're going to move on to the approval of the scholarship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In your packet, you had approval for scholarship for one of our students from 2015, actually. So there's no real time limit on the scholarship. So one of the things that we had talked about is maybe do that in the future, but there's no language that says that Anton can't submit this a couple of years later instead of just, typically we get him a couple of months later. So as you see, he's done really, really well at Berkeley. He's an incredible saxophone player if you've ever seen him play. So I'd ask you to approve that so that we can release the $5,000 scholarship to him.
So this is a scholarship he was awarded at graduation, but
2015.
He's taking, okay. And I'm sure there are good. As a parent who's getting ready for that, I can see good reasons for the delay, but I get it. I move that we approve the payment of the scholarship.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. The next item is what you do each year for me. I'm a member of the Tech Board of Directors and also the Accept Board of Directors, and they ask that you vote to appoint me each year. So I think the next meeting or the meeting after will be my appointment to the Accept Board. So I ask that you approve the appointment as the Medfield representative to the Tech Board of Directors.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, in your packet, the FY 19 budget calendar was in there. Michael, do you want to just go over that quickly? Or? Sure. Is there
So we put together the budget calendar for fiscal year 19. The process started on October 1st
Jeff and I have met with the leadership team to go over the dates
I'm sorry, Michael, can you speak up a little?
That started, so October 1st, at the first leadership meeting, we started discussing fiscal year 19 budget. That's going to happen throughout the whole month of October, as you can see. Tonight, we're asking for your approval of the budget calendar, which is going to be set. November 7th is our first annual budget meeting with the Selectmen and Warrant Committee and School Committee. That was, we were informed a couple of weeks ago of that date. This year, we're going to have a new process. Jeff and I have always spoken about in our own districts how the budget process is a little bit different. So we're going to be presenting to the departments, all town-wide departments, on November 4th, which is a Saturday, and we're going to go over the format that we're used to and the frameworks that we're used to moving forward. That's something that the warrant committee wants us to adopt here in Medfield.
So the moral of the story is don't open your mouth, you're going to get a Saturday morning meeting.
So we're going to be presenting.
What time is that?
8 o'clock on Saturday morning.
So basically, that's the way we've been presenting the budget is preferable to the warrant committee and the way you have been presenting it is preferable to the way other departments have been doing it.
Over the departments, we're getting an open discussion.
Okay.
So that will be on November 4th. So you've had a TBA because we didn't have that date. We got this afternoon. On November 11th, we will be looking at a preliminary budget. Myself with the superintendent, and then on November 18th to the 22nd, we're going to meet with all principals, content specialists to identify staffing needs and operational needs. On December 18th, the school committee will review the preliminary fiscal year 19 budget.
So can I just interrupt for a second, Michael? So I think it's important that we just, on that particular meeting, the 18th, typically we bring you a budget after going through all those other meetings with principals, et cetera, a budget that's higher than it's going to be. I mean, every year we go through that. So I just want to be clear publicly that that preliminary budget is just that. We're not going to go to the warrant committee or town meeting with a 7% increase or whatever we end up, that's the first rendition of the budget. I typically send that out to parents, and I think parents look at that and see that it's preliminary, but sometimes there's some confusion there. It's not that we're asking for that huge budget. It's the initial budget presentation that gives us a sense of what we're looking at budget-wise, whether it's positions, increases, capital, all those kinds of things. So it's not like, I just want to just be clear about that, because last year in the public hearing, I got some feedback that folks wish they'd got some more information on that when that was just a preliminary budget, and we knew that, and we communicated that, but I just want to communicate that again. Hey, Michael, thank you.
January 29th is the public hearing presentation of both the capital and the operational budget. We're also looking for a vote that evening. On January 30th, we're going to be submitting our fiscal year 19 budget to the Selectmen and Warrant Committee. We need to submit it by, I believe it's 90 days, 90 days prior to the town meeting, which this year will be April 30th. So we have to, if you look back, do the math, it has to be submitted to the Selectmen by the 30th of January.
Which is similar to what we've done in the past. I mean, typically, after the public hearing, if you vote to approve that, we submit that as your budget. And then, as you know, we have all those meetings from that point until town meeting to get to that number that we need.
That would be the budget calendar for fiscal year 19.
Yeah, I guess just for the benefit of those who are still here, that period between January 30th and April 30th is when, the public hearing is critical, but that's when a lot of the important decisions are made, because that's when the warrant committee has a better sense of what everybody's looking for and how that's all going to be divided up. So a lot happens at our school committee meetings and at the warrant committee, both in that direction. I move that we approve the budget calendar.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you, Michael.
Gail, you're here.
Hey.
Hi, Gail, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Well, here we have. Thanks. And the first thing I want to start off is to really give you thanks that we were able to have the luxury of time, which many times you just don't during the school year. So we were able to have some really good conversations about the revised ELA frameworks. They've just finalized in March, but we were actually working off draft documents and trying to sort of make our way through the changes during the school year. But it's our job to look at the frameworks in English language arts, and not only to, first we have to deconstruct, because if you've ever seen the frameworks, they come with lots of words. There are just so many words, many of them helpful, but you have to go through the weeds of the words to be able to understand where you're going. So part of our R&D was spent in conversation, but it's how our country began. And it's how good teaching starts, is that you understand the vision so that you can make the puzzle. So we took the standards that came, we took apart their puzzle, and we constructed a puzzle that that students can understand, parents can understand, and we can implement. So that became important for us. There's just so many pieces to the English language arts puzzle because they have to do so many things at once. And we want to make sure that there's a logical progression and like a reachable challenge for each of the grades as they move forward in reading literature, reading informational texts, and writing. So we spent some time talking about that, both Blake and the high school, but we also spent some time on a couple of other things that I want to show you today. Let's hope this works, and it does. Grade 7 did a really cool thing. My guess is most of you, if you say the word grammar, you'll kind of inwardly cringe. And I think some of the times that's because on skills that you know already, you have to sit through them again. So they tried to think of a way that would be, that would applaud what students already know and triage what students don't know. So here's a look at the grade 7 writing lab. I hope it comes up. Hope it does, because it's pretty cool. It is. All right, so what you're looking at is that they teach the 8 parts of speech in grade 7. Another thing you need to know, but I'm going to try to go fast, is that we do a grammar diagnostic pre-test and post-test that is ELA frameworks consistent in grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We have data to show how they progress as a result of our teaching. But when many students took the diagnostic, they might have tested out of nouns, but some did not. So what happens is this is a way for students to actually be working independently only on those grammar skills that they need. And what it does is free up the teacher to have, and this is so valuable, one-on-one conversations with students in their classroom about writing. Here's an example, is that they can listen to a tutorial.
All right. Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Ms. Reynolds. I'm an English teacher on the Red Cluster. And today I'm going to walk you through a presentation on nouns.
So what happens is you can listen to that. Oop, how do I get out of here? So what will happen here is then after they listen to that, this will go for all 8 of them, there's practice tests, which I won't punch open. And then when they're ready, when they've achieved mastery on the practice test, they can go ahead and take the quiz. Go back, report the scores, have a conversation about it. But most important is while this is all going on and students are sort of self-monitoring based on where we've told them they need to put their time in grammar, the teacher in the classroom is having a one-to-one conversation about writing. I cannot tell you how valuable that is. And it was a piece that frankly was missing. So that you're going to see there's video for each of those skills. skills. It's pretty cool. So, what will happen here is then after they listen to that, this will go for all 8 of them. There's practice tests, which I won't punch open. And then when they're ready, when they've achieved mastery on the practice test, they can go ahead and take the quiz. Go back, report the scores, have a conversation about it. But most important is while this is all going on and students are sort of self-monitoring based on where we've told them they need to put their time in grammar, the teacher in the classroom is having a one-to-one conversation about writing. I cannot tell you how valuable that is. And it was a piece that frankly was missing. So that you're going to see there's video for each of those skills. It's pretty cool. The other thing that we did, and we got together with Blake teachers, and we had huge amounts of time with the high school teachers, and the frameworks that came through need to sort of be simplified so we can understand it. As I said, everybody sort of gets it. I just showed you one sample of what we did. And we have, so this is a grade 7 reading informational text checklist. We have one of these checklists for every skill. And the frameworks go for writing, for reading informational text, and for reading literature in grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because that's how the standards are grouped. Ultimately, these checklists are really good because as we move forward standards-based grading, it'll be great to use. But more important than that, let me get back to here, we're moving towards a really cool thing, and we're just at our sort of early infancy in this, and that is how to make all of these pieces fit together. So I just wanted to show you, this is a very rough document. It's not prettied up. It will be pretty later. But right now we have a thing called vertical team, because I think it's really important that each grade understands the frameworks for all those 3 things that I mentioned. But I think that the most important thing is that we have conversation, that we have deliberate, logical, and frameworks-driven conversations about, I'm going to hand you off from grade 6 writing, okay, grade 7, take it over. And there's a natural and kind of seamless progression. So, and I sort of got this idea, not mine, but we sort of, and you're looking at a very rough draft that has from last year, every term's writing assignment for grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, and 12 for every marking term. Now, there'll be some change-ups here. Up top, you're going to see that those writing frameworks checklists are also hyperlinked. Eventually, we're going to look to match up all the writing frameworks with all the writing assignments so that they'll be part of the assignment. Students will see the assignment, but also see what standards are being supported from this. So we meet once a month. Teachers volunteer to meet once a month, and what we're trying to do is make sure that we're visionary, we're real, that students' writing gets better and better. I think one of the things that I want to broadcast is that at Medfield, every term students must write a weighty something, an assignment that's frameworks connected, and most of it's analytical from grade 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So add them up, how many times they've written analytically before you get to college. Many of you will have heard that when students come back from college, they can't believe how much they know and how prepared they are. It's because instead of writing once or twice in high school, they've written about 27 weighty pieces with feedback. And I tip my hat to the students, and I tip my hat to the teachers, and I wanted you to let you know we're frameworks connected, and that's about all. Thank you.
How do you, when they change, how would you update all that?
This is a live document, so we expect it to change. We want it to change.
You'll have to go in and update them.
Yeah, you'll just go in and hyperlink it. We're just having our once a month vertical team meetings now to say, because we're changing a lot of these writing assignments to include more nonfiction. The frameworks say you need a little bit more nonfiction. So how is it we're going to adjust what we do with the writing that you're going to react to nonfiction sometimes versus just the dense literature that we do. So it's a live document. It should be a live document. I think once your assignments are etched in stone, so are you. You know?
I love it.
Any other questions?
Great, Gail, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let me just, do you want me to X out? Get me out of here? Get me out of here. Thank you.
And so next I'd like to welcome a little visit to Wheelock. Bethany Robertson, who is the librarian at Wheelock, and a second grade teacher, Joan Dion, third grade teacher, Jim Keel, are going to tell us about the R&D that they worked on integrating STEAM.
We have print outs just in case. We have Plan B. Okay, so as Kim was saying, our focus was increasing STEAM in the classroom and the library. But really before we get into that, it's important to know what STEAM actually is and how it impacts students. So we just have a very short video to hopefully explain that.
What is STEAM?
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to get it.
What is STEAM? STEAM is an educational approach to learning that uses science, technology, engineering, art, and math. As access points for guided exchange, including dialogue and critical thinking. Why STEAM and what is in the past? So students will increase critical thinking, take risks, learn through hands-on experiences, persist in problem solving, experience meaningful collaboration, and work through the creative process.
So there were 3 parts to this R&D project, and the first was, for me, I really wanted to increase collaboration between myself and the classroom teachers, and that was why it was so great to have classroom teachers working with me, so I could make sure what I was doing was actually going to be helpful to them. So what I did was I created 3 lessons for each grade, and they're ready-made. However, I can really customize them any way a teacher is interested. They could be small group, they could be whole class, but it was a starting place for the teachers to really bring STEAM in. So for example, 2nd grade, I had a sorting to recycle a sorting to recycle lesson with our Lego their Lego robotic kits. And all of the things they have are great. They have a lot of real-world connections, which you'll see in a 3rd grade one too. And the format that I'm going to share with the staff is giving them the view at a glance, all of the pieces, and then when I was able to, I tried to tie in as many curriculum links and standards as I could. There's more to be done there, but I started with many. I also did, for 2nd grade, mapping Medfield with Google Maps and robots, because in 2nd grade they spend a lot of time in their curriculum working on mapping skills. So tying in the technology piece of using Google Maps and then even coding with robots, maybe they could simulate Medfield in, maybe they make it with different materials, and then they could code the robots to navigate through the town. And then lastly, building towers, and I based that on Rapunzel, because in 2nd grade they do a lot with folk tales, and that's one of the Common Core standards. And also they're doing with the next generation science standards and the new FOSS kits that they're using in science to teach that, they are doing a lot with towers. So this is an extra supplemental lesson to that. And for 3rd grade, same thing, they had the option, these lessons could be small group that I could work with, or whole class. And the Lego We Do lesson that I had for that with the robotic Legos again was preventing flooding, another real world problem, something that has definitely been an issue lately with all of the things going on. And similarly, they too have folk tales in the Common Core standards. So building bridges, I based that off of the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. And additionally, I think you guys came up with a bridge one too, right, in 3rd grade? Your task cards. So the 3rd grade classroom teacher has a task card that they could do, and mine supplements that, adding the research component. So maybe they could make their bridges a little more complex and change something that they might have done in the classroom and take it to a new level. And then also with 3rd grade, they focus a lot in the curriculum on colonial America and going, of course, to Plymouth and having pilgrims come in. So using coding and robots, if they simulated a colonial town, learning about the Puritan trades, pulling that in, where would it make sense to have the blacksmith in the town and the apothecary. So tying that all together and adding that STEAM component where they could be engineering and designing with art. So the other part of the R&D was having things for the teachers that the teachers could have readily available to them if they were interested. We're not pushing any of this on them, but they're optional activities that they could easily implement. They wouldn't have to spend too much time prepping forward. We were trying to do that for them. So I'm going to turn that over to the people who did it.
Hi. So to piggyback on what Bethany was saying in terms of linking this to her projects in the library, we were thinking in terms of second grade, we don't want to add more to a teacher's plate given the class size and the needs vary so much within our classrooms that I considered the three-tiered approach to meet students where they're at right now, and we can either challenge them, bump them up. It could be extension activity, or it could be something that is tailored to whatever. So in any event, I chose Goldilocks and the Three Bears as one of the fairy tales, as well as Little Red Riding Hood. So I also had a reading response task card that can be tailored to basically any sort of literature, fiction or nonfiction. So basically, what you're looking at up on the screen is the little QR code. So students would get this laminated card, and they just have to scan the QR code, and it will bring them up to a story at their level. So, for example, if you're in Group 1, that is the same story as you would be reading in Group 3, and so forth. So all children have access to the story itself at their level, and they're able to, glean the necessary information. After that, then students are either working in pairs or partners to come up with a product, an artifact. So they have to collaborate, they have to use their imagination. In math, we emphasize the fact that we're teaching children to be thinkers and problem solvers. So something as simple as a fairy tale can go a number of different ways. So in the Goldilocks and the Three Bears example, the students are coming together using any sort of materials that we're providing. Teachers can supplement as needed, but they're basically going to figure out a way to create a chair that would hold Baby Bear. So we would obviously have a modeled Baby Bear. And then they would have to test it out, as we do in the STEAM process, and share their thinking and results. An artifact on Seesaw, which is an application that the students use often. I started implementing it last year in my classroom, and we were using it as what is it? Digital portfolio. I'm so sorry. It's late. So anyway, so this is just one example of using a fairy tale, which is also part of our curriculum frameworks as well. So there's 3 different examples, and we didn't want to add more responsibility to the classroom teacher. So this will be sort of a make and take that we will propose at our faculty meeting, as Beth just said. So that's pretty much my spiel. So thank you.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Keel, 3rd grade, and Beth tricked me? No. She asked me to help out with the STEAM and do some things for 3rd grade. And for me, the STEAM activities, regardless of what, I don't teach structural engineering to 3rd graders, but that's what this lesson's all about. They tested out 3 different types of pillars and each STEAM activity I tried to find some sort of real world reason, and the kids have seen lots of houses on stilts, and flooding came to be like a theme over the summer, and then it happened a lot. But for me, the STEAM activities, they don't always directly connect to the science we're doing in class, but for me, it's all about what you saw in the video: persistence, making mistakes, and why did it go wrong, and then getting up and doing it again, because I think we can all attest to our children do not like to fail. They don't want to be wrong ever. And this is all about being wrong, why didn't it work, and making predictions. So the kids predicted which column of paper would hold the most, and they all picked the square, and they were all wrong. And then at the end, they had to figure out why, and or talk about why they thought it was this way and that way, and it brought up lots of discussions. And this is a really fun video. So let's see here. And just watch. He doesn't even pay attention to how many. It's just funny. Like.
Oh my God.
My entire library was cleaned out.
Oh.
So, yeah, I just like that he snoozed. He wasn't even looking. He was just stacking things and counting. So yeah, it was all about, you know, they love crushing stuff and things like that. So it was a lot of fun breaking things, breaking bridges. But it was all, again, it comes back to the conversation. And then we did. My triad and I, 2 other teachers, we did one every week at the beginning of September. It became more of a team building activity for the kids, and it was all about lots of discussions at the end. What went well? What does a good partner make? So it went way beyond just science, technology, engineering, math. It went into group dynamics, because I can say that most jobs these kids go into in the future, they will be part of a team, and they won't be isolated in a cube by themselves. Some will, but many will have to be part of a team and work together, and this is where these things begin, listening to other people's conversations and, you know, her ideas, his ideas, putting it all together and then trying it out and see what happens and learning how to fail, because, you know, that's what we need to teach them how to do. And
I have a
back to the
question.
boss.
I have a question. What, of all of you, pipe up if you feel like, just a quick one though, what sorts of obstacles do you foresee or have you seen as you've been working through this process of getting it into the classroom or kind of working together? Have there been ones that are really squeaky, that are tough, or they're just
Particular lessons, you mean?
particular lessons, or just, you know, like the process of helping get STEAM more integrated into the classroom without putting
Time is
more.
going to be the biggest challenge. You guys can
Always.
speak up. But
Yeah.
I think the fact that we have these ready-made activities will hopefully help that. You started it, you planned it. We haven't presented it to the faculty yet, so it'll be interesting to see what takes off and what other challenges we face.
Yeah.
But I anticipate that'll be a big one.
I tried to make mine 30 to an hour. It's time and a bloated curriculum, and we're responsible for umpteen million things in the classroom each day. But it was good to step back, take that 45 minutes, and let the kids do that. You saw the joy in their face of doing that. Whether they understand why the column is strong or not, but they learned how to work as a team and persevere through something. And we did cup stacking with little plastic cups, and there was one group, I think they stacked the cups 15 different times, and the last time they put the little Lego figure on top, it would crumble, but they kept going and going and going, and that was the whole point. Like, and that was the highlights. Like, their tower failed. They didn't have anything to measure, but I made a big deal about the fact that they persevered through something. They kept trying to make their work. So, but our problem is time.
Always.
There's never enough time, and I don't think resources can be a problem. You guys are really generous about, you know, helping us out, and stuff we're doing is pretty cheap.
I think one thing that could help too is a lot of these could potentially be adapted to be a station. So having that flexibility, the teacher could be doing other things, and it could be a small area. So there's hope with that too.
And in my examples, I really wanted to have the ability to have flexible grouping. So with the different, you know, text versions having the same theme, students can go off in small groups and attain the information and yet gather together to create their artifact and problem solve, which, you know, plays into the interpersonal skills and that ability to be patient and wait your turn and get materials and be leaders. So I definitely wanted to have that kind of project base and then wrap it around, you know, what we're doing in the curriculum already. So using fairy tales is a great way to do that, to extend the lessons beyond that mini lesson in the whole group. So enrichment.
It's almost a time for them to put all of those separate pieces of the acronym together into one time, because they're using all of those pieces at once. So it's a chance for them to see where all of those disparate pieces of your curriculum come together at one moment. Like, oh, I did some science, I did some technology, I did some this and that and the other thing. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Not done yet. I do want to quickly note, too, that I was able to trick 2 third-grade teachers into working with me, and I had only 1 second-grade teacher, so there is a difference in the volume of tasks, so just FYI. And then the last part was how to get the necessary materials to actually support all of the STEAM that we're hoping to be doing. And I I was planning actually on writing a grant anyway to supplement my library makerspace. And when I talk about makerspace, that's more those are the materials that you need to actually do those STEAM activities. So my hope was to tie that into having the teachers get materials they would like for their maker spaces, whether they're related to the activities you created or if they had other ideas. So that is the next step, and then we'll share this at the faculty meeting. We'll provide all the task cards. I have a survey to send out to them, asking them if they want the cards delivered to them. I will laminate them for them and give them to them, and then also ask for any input for materials that they do want. And lastly, of course, I'm hoping that they will collaborate with me on the lessons that I did. So, and lastly, thank you so much for everything you've supported, because none of this would be possible without you giving us the opportunity. So, thank you.
Great, thanks so much.
I love when you guys come in and present all this stuff, you know, at this time of year. I think it's so interesting to see what you're doing, especially if you don't have a child that's talking about some of these things. I think it's so helpful. And just the fact that you're teaching resiliency, right, and how to analyze themselves, which I think is a massive life skill. Not just the collaboration piece of it, but that resiliency that you can fail 15 times and you keep coming back to that table. So that, I think, is such a gift to our kids. So
the growth mindset.
Oh, it's so good, so good.
One quick question, sorry. So is there a goal within Wheelock? So you folks have worked on this R&D for the summer. Is there a goal that each teacher will try this at least once this year or something? Or in terms of, or at least if there's a teacher who's uncomfortable, they'll do it in the library, or?
The support is there. When I initiated this process, I didn't want to force anyone to do anything. So when I present it, that's my message. I don't know if that will be presented everywhere else that way. But I'm more than willing to support teachers if they're uncomfortable with any part of it, even the task cards. I would be more than willing to set them up and do it in the library with them and get them started, and that's something that I'll make sure I share at the meeting too.
Yeah, and when we created the tasks, we wanted them to be basically walk in, you can get whatever you need and go, and that it's not a lot of prep and planning, and because I think that's one of the hardest parts. Like, you want me to see, oh, I've got to create, think, go all these things. So everything we have there is pretty much ready to go.
Beautiful.
That's
minus
awesome.
Plastic cups.
Add that to the grant. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in tonight.
So now we switch over to proficiency-based world language program. We have Ellen Tubman and Paula Hamilton with us.
I'm going to try to stay with my 10 minutes, but I don't know how we'll do because we're language teachers and we like to talk. But basically, this is my little agenda of our presentation to you folks today. Sarah Rodenhigh was supposed to be here to help present the actual project. But I thought in order to really get an idea of why R&Ds are so important to our department, I needed to just do a little bit of background and frame what proficiency is, because most people don't really know what proficiency is. So I'm going to define proficiency and explain that that is the movement in world languages these days. That is how we are supposed to be teaching, and that all is based in our national organization. And then I'm going to try to pull it into the context of what we do in Medfield. And that's a tall order for 5 minutes, but I'm going to try to keep it to about 5 minutes and then hand it over to Paula, and she's going to give you a sample of what her specific R&D project, she did it with Sarah, but Sarah had to leave, for the Spanish 4 group that they did, based on all of this kind of background. So the first question I have I have to address is, what is proficiency and what is not proficiency? So I guess I'd like you to think about when you learned a language in school. And I'm hoping that I see smiles, but I only see one. Anna Mae is smiling. You're smiling too.
Well.
But most people are kind of going, okay, I had to conjugate verbs, I had to memorize vocabulary, and then the worst nightmare of most language teachers is, I took it for 6 years and I can't speak a word. Anybody have those ideas in their head? So that's what proficiency is not. Okay, so the movement began actually back in the 1980s, took hold in like the 2000s, I'd say, and has really come alive in the early, like since about 2010 to now. And everybody's talking about proficiency and what it is, and what it is as opposed to learning about a language and how a language works, you're learning how to use a language. And so we have all sorts of guidelines, and I put a few little visuals up there, but those are the different levels that are identified. And we try to talk in terms of what students can do, and we have our can-do statements and what students can do with the language. And if you have any kids in the curriculum, you've probably seen that as well. We try to keep things authentic and realistic as much as possible and pertinent to what kids would want to do. So what does this mean for us in our classrooms? And this is why R&D is so important to us. It means that we have to have very, very well articulated targets, which is what we want our students to be doing, which is based on all of these can-do statements and the different levels. And it means that we don't use textbooks. And so that's my little visual, the textbooks flying out the window. And I'm actually really proud to say that Medfield bought the Spanish and French, not Chinese because it's more recent, and Latin is a little bit different, but the Spanish and French textbooks were bought, I think, my second or third year here in Medfield, and that was in 2004. And after that, the whole department, separate from all this, just decided that that wasn't the right way to go because it wasn't realistic, it wasn't authentic, it wasn't new enough, because it takes like 3 or 4 years to write a textbook. So this is why R&D is so important to us, because what we have to do is we have to go on the internet and we have to find all the materials that we're using. We have to find video clips that we want to use. And so these are 2 little screenshots that I did of somebody I follow on Twitter and somebody that I follow on Facebook, and how we get our resources. And then there's also Teachers Pay Teachers, where we get some of our stuff from, and that kind of thing. So we have to spend a lot of time pulling all these resources together, because if it's not current, it's not authentic. And if it's not recent, it's not authentic. And it's not pertinent. So that's why R&D is so important to us. So that was my framework. And I'm going to hand it over to Paula, and she's going to show you guys an example of what came out of the Spanish 4 R&D project from this summer. Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, Sarah was with me, sitting by my side until 8:30, and then she had to leave for childcare issues. So I have some notes that I better put my glasses on to see so I can remember her part as well as mine. And I don't so much have things to show you, as mostly I'll tell you about what we did, because most of what we do, the products are in Spanish, so what's the point? No offense, but it wouldn't mean a lot to you. It means a lot to us, obviously. And then I'll share something with you that is in English that came out of it. Like Ellen said, the lack of a textbook is crazy, but it's the right thing to do. And I spend countless hours, as we all do, preparing things for the classroom. And my husband says, hey, ask Paula about that school she works in, because they don't use books there anymore, and it's crazy. And I have to believe that no matter where, and he says, you should work at a school that still uses a textbook, Paula. And I go, no matter where I work, this is the right thing to do. And I love being here, and I love that our department has embraced this, and that you guys also support this with R&D as well, because it really is an overwhelming task, but it is the right way to go about teaching a foreign language these days. So what Sarah and I looked at in Spanish 4, we had kind of already started this process in Spanish 2, which I also teach, Spanish 3 as well, so we thought it was time that Spanish 4 got their turn to kind of start revamping it a little more intensely in the summertime, because of course we have taken the steps because we do believe it is the right thing to do. So what we did this summer was we kind of looked at what our culminating project has always been in Spanish 4, was this thing called Lo que me importa, which is where the kids had to get up and speak Spanish for 8 minutes in front of the class about something that's important to them. Either it could be a person, it was often a vacation home, or whatever. And it was a great project. For a pre-proficiency-based classroom, the rubric was heavily weighted towards accuracy and grammar, because that's how we taught a large chunk of our classes, was with grammar quizzes, grammar rules, and then making activities to incorporate them. So that clearly had to go, especially the rubric part of that. It was a great assignment, but the rubric was not where we were headed. And we had already shifted that a little bit. We had also scaled the project down a little bit. So we started with that because that was kind of the end game in Spanish 4. We changed the project a little bit last year. So this summer, we looked at that rubric, threw it out, because it didn't make any sense anymore, and then thought about how we could take steps, proficiency-based steps, to get the kids at that place in May, probably. So we found, we took the unit that we have in the fall, which is based on technology, which was a new unit to us, and then tried to find resources that were more relevant for the kids. So Ellen said some words like authentic, and you said something else. Realistic. So, and then two other that are really important are comprehensible and compelling. So Sarah and I had some resources we had used that we had found online, which takes forever and a day, because the great thing is there's so many resources, and that's also the horrible thing is that there are so many resources, and you can spend forever looking at them, and we do, because we're trying to find the perfect one. And then we need to cut ourselves off and say, this is the perfect one today because we spent 20 hours looking for this one. So we did find some great replacements this summer, actually, things that were really more realistic, or not realistic, more relevant to the kids' lives. We had a commercial that showed some old ladies looking at some inappropriate videos, we think, online because they were chuckling over them. It was a commercial in Spanish. It was great. And some guys stealing the Wi-Fi, walking around with a laptop outside. It's a cute commercial. It had nothing to do with teenagers. And then we found, like, just stumbled upon, looking at the internet after hours and hours, a commercial from Nicaragua that was for teenagers and them on their cell phones taking pictures and Snapchatting people and sharing their whole world with their friends. Because that's what counts when you're a teenager. And it was like the best thing. And then we have to take a resource like that, and then they can't, even our kids in AP Spanish, they can't necessarily look at or listen to a commercial on TV and understand it. It's native speaker Spanish, and that's tough stuff. So then Sarah and I create activities, pre-activities, during activities, post-activities, so that they can take a resource like this, and it's comprehensible enough to them, and they get out of it what we need them to get out of it, because we've preloaded them with the words, the keywords that are in that, and asking them the right questions that will get them to pull the material out of it that we need them to. And this is all very time-consuming, and it's great fun. It makes a lot of sense once it's in place. We also have to look at vocab lists. So say 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had vocabulary lists in Spanish 4 that were 80 words long. That's crazy. It was great at the time. It wasn't crazy then, but that's kind of how we taught back then. Big vocab lists, lots of grammar rules, and the kids were great at learning these rules and learning words, but we know that they will only last for so long when you're memorizing words to do well on a quiz. So that's not the skill anymore. The skill is to get the words into your vocabulary that stays in your vocabulary. So that means taking a list that used to be 80 words and making it really down to 30 or 35, which I'd love to just draw a line and say, okay, it's the top 35, but that's not the way it is. And we have to say, okay, these are the activities we've planned out. Where are the 35 or so most important words that we really think will stick with the teenagers because they're going to use this type of language? So that was another thing we did this summer, was pare down this list to make it a more realistic and achievable list for the kids. And then with that in mind, we have other activities too. Around this technology project, they have a presentation due this week, in fact, a 1-minute presentation to build up to this much longer one that will happen in the spring, where they can talk about anything technology. They have 3 options. Technology, I want to marry you is one of them. Technology, you have destroyed my life. And technology, I do not need you. So out of those topics, they can actually speak about anything, because you can frame anything technology related under one of those umbrellas. So that's due in a couple of days. But with that, the kids get a ton of liberty as far as what they can present, which is awesome, because language will only stick with them. Do you want to pass those on? Will only stick with them if they're talking about things that are important to them. And that's the fun thing about languages, is that we really can talk about anything we want. That the kids want us to talk about. Yes. It takes a lot of pre-planning to get the language that's important to them and the activities with that language so that it sticks with them. So this project, it's great, but what we're really happy with is this rubric. So we used to have, did you use accurate grammar? Did you use these intense verb tenses that we've been talking about for a couple of years? Did you use 12 vocab words or some number of vocab words that we deem the appropriate number? So those types of things have gone away. And now what matters to us with these projects and all of them going forward is, did you complete the task? We gave you certain things we wanted you to do, and did you do them? Did you use Spanish to tell me why you want to marry technology in a specific and engaging way? Could we understand you? So as opposed to saying, were you 97% accurate in the grammar that you used in this presentation, could someone that's trying to understand you understand you? So not necessarily a person you would run into the street in Mexico, but me as your teacher, or someone who wants to understand what you're saying, and can they focus on your words enough and you got your meaning across? And that is, in a proficiency-based classroom, way more important than you used your verbs with 97% accuracy and I'm going to give you my stamp of approval. And then, of course, there is an accuracy column, because you can only make so many mistakes before your meeting does get a little bit muddled. So it still counts. It's not that has gone away by any stretch of the imagination. But definitely the focus is on, have you done what we've asked you to do, and can I understand you? So that is where we're headed, and that was just a small piece of, I hope that was comprehensible to you and compelling as well, because I know I speak quickly, and it's late, and we all want to get going, but does anybody have any questions?
I also
it,
just
yeah.
want to point out, I want to highlight that the way they set up the task, the way they framed it is an interesting way, right? So the kids are going to, I hope, look at it and go, oh, that's pretty cool. Do I want to marry technology? You know, they tried to hook. It's called having a hook. It's kind of cool. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
Okay,
Thanks, Helen. Great job.
pleasure. Thank you.
So next, really excited that we're working on an elementary guidance program. So I invited Stephanie Worthley, Kathy Blockhorst, and Lindsay Warner to share the work that they did this summer.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having us here tonight. We were thrilled this summer to have our summer R&D program approved. You may recall that Lindsay Warner, who's here tonight, she was new to Medfield last year. She is our grades 4 and 5 guidance counselor at Dale Street. And as of last year, Kathy Bachher's part-time position was moved to a full-time position, and she works at Memorial and Wheelock as our K through 3rd grade guidance counselor. So I finally feel like we have an elementary guidance department. So last year it was really just, throwing everybody into their buildings and figuring out what we needed to do and where we were going. But when it came time to plan our summer R&D, we really wanted to think about what skills our elementary students need, what skills we should be teaching through our guidance programming. We wanted to look at what other nearby towns have elementary guidance programs and start to make some connections and utilize the things they've been doing over the years. We wanted to use our summer R&D time to really look at things like CASEL's social emotional learning skills and the 5 competencies that we wanted to think about for our elementary students. We wanted to look at the American School Counseling Association and the Massachusetts School Counseling Association frameworks to really try to align the curriculum that we think is important and that we want to do to make sure that we are implementing the right skills. We also wanted to make sure that as we were moving forward that we weren't repeating skills or lessons, that if we were doing zones and regulation in kindergarten, that we weren't doing that year after year, and we wanted to make sure that the students at Dale Street were reinforcing those skills and behaviors, but again, not repeating same lessons over and over again. So it was a really great opportunity for us to just sit down and think about where we wanted to go forward with the elementary program. We also we're kept thinking about the students in this process. We want to start talking with students and maybe doing some pre-tests and post-tests for probably students in grades 3 through 5 regarding their needs and their skills that they think are important, as we move forward. And then we were also thinking a lot about the parent network and what kind of supports we can provide for elementary parents moving forward around social emotional competencies and just, what are the needs of our parents in the district. With that said, actually before moving on, as Kim mentioned, there were 58 summer R&D projects, and another project I worked on was with the Blake guidance counseling staff, and we actually did a very similar R&D project to this, where we looked at the 5 social emotional competencies in the guidance curriculum and thinking about what lessons we were doing per grade level and how those competencies fit into the curriculum. So I was pretty excited having the opportunity to work on both, to think about, as Gail was saying before, kind of a vertical team and vertical alignment, so we can think about all of these skills and competencies that we're working on from grades K through 8. Haven't even thought about the high school yet. It's kind of a different animal there, but at least I felt like this summer I had a pretty good handle on, moving forward elementary and middle school. So the first thing we started with was surveying area towns to figure out who has elementary guidance programs. I reached out to, I have a job alike with guidance directors in the area. I reached out to them to find out who has elementary counselors. And, we have a small sample here: Ashland, Dover, Sherborne, Framingham, Hopkinton, Needham, Walpole, Wayland, and Westboro. And our plan moving forward is basically to create a job alike with some of the elementary counselors. We'd like to set up maybe quarterly meetings where we come together and talk about the programs they're working working on, the issues that they're seeing. We can, tap their resources and figure out what they're doing, so we're not constantly reinventing the wheel. Also is helpful, I know in my guidance directors group, we have just an email chain that people are constantly sending out questions to each other. Have you heard of this curriculum? Have you heard of this? Have you done this? And so forth. So we figure that will be a really good resource for us moving forward to have this elementary job alike. So to start tonight, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to talk about one of the 5 social emotional competencies, to start with self-awareness.
Thanks. So with self-awareness is obviously important, and so we really look to develop some lessons that focus on this. Just previously, I had been the elementary guidance department with 1 day at Wheelock and 2 days at Dale Street, and it's not like I wasn't, working hard then, but I was really doing what they called Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, which were small groups in individual work. This we're talking about doing across the grade level. So that's the piece that's really new. It's not that we weren't helping kids identify their feelings. It's just they were definitely doing open circle, and they continue to do that, at least K through 3. But this is to augment that and know that we need repetition and a little more hands-on opportunities to be doing these things to get those there. So now what we're rolling out sort of as a team is doing this grade-wise rather than just those more intensive formats. So this is just an example of a lesson I've been doing starting in October, the Color Monster, where we're identifying feelings that we're then talking with the kindergarten students about how that feeling feels in your body. And they're awesome. They come up with crunchy. It feels crunchy when I'm angry. And it's just great. So really bringing it into that sense of identifying what the feeling is, and then identifying how often do you have that feeling. Is this a feeling you have a lot? Which are the feelings you have a lot? Identifying triggers within their emotions. That if you look down, the first grade lesson of talking back to the worry bully, that's a lesson I created last year for our first graders for managing anxieties. Again, this is something that kids come to me in small group and individually, but across our first grade, across all our grades, being able to manage anxiety even well into adulthood is something we're really targeting. And then I won't go through all of this because it is really late, but that idea of making sure we are touching upon all of these that are identified. And we did have one of those vertical documents, but we were not nearly so brave, or it is way too messy to put up there. But that idea of we want to make sure we are cycling back and talking about identifying emotions, but that we have touched on it at all the grade levels. Next major skill we're looking at is self-management. Zones of regulation, I did not put which grade level we're doing that, because we do it across a lot of grades because it is a wonderful program, but that we are hitting on different aspects of it at the different grades. We have been so fortunate, Jenna Johnson and Karen Alberts over at Wheelock do some of these lessons across the grade. They had been doing that back when I was just at Wheelock 1 day a week, so they had been implementing that. So some of that's pre-existing. We're introducing it. This here is a first grade review lesson up at the top, identifying that next sheet. You can see identifying the strategies. We really want to give kids a sense of efficacy. When they get these feelings, you can do something about it. But what you do might be different than the child next to you. What are your go-to strategies? And they then create a little bookmark that they can have as a hard copy reference. That's just an example of a first grade activity. But again, these are 10 or 12 pieces of that self-management that we want to make sure by the time they get through the elementary, they have seen it more than once. They have seen it multiple times, threading through, sort of spiraling through the grade levels. And they did a great job. Oh.
So we're going to switch back and forth a little bit.
As Stephanie mentioned, last year was my first year at Dale Street and in Medfield, so it was really helpful, and I really appreciate the chance to do some R&D work. You know, getting to know the students in the school district last year, to have the three of us work together was a great opportunity. So social awareness, as you can imagine, is something that's very important for 4th and 5th graders to work on, and you know, we are touching on it before that. But a lesson that I did with both 4th and 5th graders last year, and I'll continue to do with this current 4th grade, was looking at sympathy and empathy. What do they each mean? What are the differences? We talked about what is point of view, what are social cues, defining each of those terms. And then you'll see the active listening. So we'll go through and, you know, what does it mean to be an active listener? You know, you'll, in the bullet points here, it's identifying social cues and understanding other people's point of view, and just, you know, explicitly teaching students, how do you be a good listener? You make eye contact, you point your body towards the person, and then we would give them scenarios and allow them to practice that. And then I'll jump back to you.
Just another one, relationship skills, which is, you know, clearly very important. This is just a visual from a lesson I had done last year over at Memorial. Not grade-wise. It was just a teacher had a need, and I said I can go in, and then another teacher heard about it, and we did it in a few lessons, and we'll be incorporating it in across the grade level this year. But just that idea of, you know, even when Jim was speaking about the ability to work together in groups, these relationship skills, targeting them in a very direct, you know, teaching format, you know, our boss versus friend lesson. Again, just making sure we are hitting on all these skills in a purposeful manner as they go K through 5.
And then responsible decision-making was actually something that came out of the summer R&D that we wanted to do more, especially in 4th and 5th grade. So the lessons that I do at Dale Street, I do with Elizabeth Strzekalowski, who is our school psychologist, and this is a lesson that we hope to do with the 5th grade this year together, and just looking at problem solving. What are the steps? You know, as I said, explicitly teaching these skills. What does this look like? And then in terms of socially, that's what we wanted to focus on with this group. So an example would be that the image below, you know, does the size of your reaction match the size of the problem in social situations? And then, so another thing that Stephanie had mentioned was options for parent support network. So last year, Kathy and I actually held a book talk for parents that was open to parents of K-5 students. So we wanted to continue that this year, and we actually had an exit survey last year for parents, and just in the discussions, a few things that came up were competition in sports and social media. So we've been looking at books specifically for those things. So you'll see Screenwise was an example of a book, and social media, and then Raising Human Beings. So just we're in the early process of just researching different books that we think would be helpful. We're working on an elementary guidance website together, just to be able to put resources out there and parents know that they can contact us. And then we're hoping to have maybe some coffees or speakers. Like I said, we're still in the early stages of this.
And then just moving forward, these were just, it was, thank you again for the R&D opportunity, but what we think we can accomplish, and then what's left on the table, this is sort of what's left on the table. Just these different lessons, some of them actually, like the 3rd grade one, I ended up doing in a separate R&D, creating some of the additional lessons. Again, getting that job alike going with the other communities, I think will just sort of enrich what we have to offer our students. Some of the assessment, it's not a naturally data-driven department, if you will, but really looking at how can we do that, and what resources are out there through MASCA and NASCA and all those other you know, nationwide models that we can pull from to have some more of that data created, and referral systems, and then the parent book read. And so just looking at that, and in particular also when we did do the parent book read, the level of expertise of our parents, of our community, their interest in doing, you know, having a village approach to raising their children and creating that. And so we're looking at the guidance office as an opportunity to do that. It's just going to take a little more planning to figure out how to best offer that. But, that really was really driven by the parents and their excitement and their motivation and commitment. So we want to be responsive to that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
How do you envision going forward of getting some of these lessons into all the kids? I know we talk about with the teachers and the time. There's so many different things. I'm just thinking, how do we make this accessible for all children? Because I think of those kids that might not necessarily come to a guidance, but could use these lessons, or I'm just
well, that's
wondering
the
how
big. These lessons that we were showing here are ones that we are bringing across the grade level. So
into the classrooms.
Into
or
the
when does
classroom.
it into the classrooms? Okay.
We still do the small groups. We still do the
Right.
individuals, but we want to make sure that lessons that have touched upon all of these are being presented in the classroom. Right now, I'm looking at three per grade, 3 lessons per grade level, with the exception of, because Jenna Johnson already has some things in place with the zones of regulation, I'm like, I don't know how much extra time can they take. So I'm adding fewer lessons there. We're doing a mindfulness one right before MCAS, and we're doing the empathy lesson in addition, but we didn't create 3 second grade and 3 third grades because some of those existed. But these will be all the students across the grade level.
Oh, that's great.
And then at Dale Street, what I'll be doing is like one lesson with each grade at the beginning of the year. So I'm going to do empathy with 4th grade and decision making with 5th grade. And then with the second half of the year, I'll do mindfulness with 4th grade and thinking traps with the 5th grade. And the current 5th grade received the empathy and the mindfulness lessons last year. So they will have received all 4 lessons.
And when are those lessons happening? Are they happening during, that's what I'm trying to figure, are they happening during like a wellness period, or where are they happening?
The timing, and I'm sure the same thing happens with you, but it has to be during an academic time right now.
Yeah.
We do have a block that is sometimes open for, what's it called? Presentations. Enrichment, yes. So it really varies. It depends on scheduling, but teachers are very flexible. I've been really fortunate that they want us to come in and they're open to it, but timing is definitely an issue.
And I just put out a Google Doc with options of times, and the teachers go in. So the teachers are selecting when they would like me to present based on the different assorted times I've presented. So some might be putting it in an open circles time, and someone else might be putting it in at another time. But they have a fair amount of control over that.
And I think that's an age-old guidance problem, is time.
Right.
Like anything
Everyone,
else,
right?
the middle school
Yeah.
counselors are the only ones that have
Right.
guidance classes.
Yes.
So even the high school, we're borrowing time
Yeah.
from departments here and there throughout the year.
Well, it's so important. That's what if you can sneak time, not sneak it, but just kind of grab it from different places, because I think it's so important for all the kids. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
If there's any doubt that we needed guidance in elementary schools.
Exactly.
So thank you for your support on that in the budget. We really appreciate that.
We're getting there. I hope this doesn't seem like elementary based. It just happened this way, but Jamie Callahan is here, really representing all K-5, K-8 teachers, right? And it was at a leadership meeting where she was presenting this work to the principals and Jeff and I, and we all you have to share this with school committee. So here she is, sharing her work with one R&D, and I think you did how many? 5?
Sorry, are all 58 R&D projects online somewhere? Where?
No, we have a list that we can put online. We could do
Because
that.
I always think it's, parents are interested in,
Right. Yeah, we
what
could
did we spend
absolutely
the
do that.
money on? And
Put a
so
link
just
to
to
it.
see a bird's eye view of.
Sure, yeah.
Cool.
Hi. So I'm Jamie Callahan. I'm the elementary literacy coordinator. And like Kim said, I worked on several R&D projects with the elementary teachers throughout the summer. But the one that I chose to present to you is about our writing rubrics. So just to give you a quick snapshot history, which I realize everyone's given a quick snapshot history, maybe it doesn't feel so quick, so I apologize. But when we looked at our writing curriculum in particular, the math literacy standards standards were first updated in 2010 when the Common Core came out. So we had had a document from 1997, and then they were updated in 2010. And at that time, it really prompted us to look at our curriculum and work to revise and realign it to what the standards we're calling kids to be able to know and do by the end of every grade level. And so by the end of the 2012 school year, we had, with a small committee, kind of selected the Lucy Calkins writing workshop units of study to support the implementation of the updated writing standards. And so we've been in process of fully those units of study have been fully implemented for several school years. And the short end to a long story is that we are on a trimester schedule at the elementary level, which really lends itself to the writing standards themselves. There are 10 anchor writing standards, but the first 3 are the types of writing that kids need to know how to function and demonstrate understanding and ability in. And so those first 3 standards, the narrative standards, the information writing standards, and the opinion persuasive standards, are like the nuts and bolts of what the 3 units that we implement represent. And so with those, as the whole year goes through, every child K through 5 has an opportunity to go through three of those units, and one's kind of each assigned to a trimester. And in addition to the unit itself, then there's a common assessment attached to each of those units. So each unit at the end of it has some type of prompt that is standardized and given within a specific time frame across the 3 schools. And the students have writing samples that then get scored using a consistent rubric. So this is something that has been in process that we've been doing for a number of years. And teachers really have done their due diligence with this implementation process. And I have the opportunity in my position, which is so lovely, to really be working with teachers frequently, like on the daily, really. I'm in the school, that's where I am. I mean, I'm housed at Wheelock, but I'm at the 3 elementary schools all the time. And I'm at their CPT meetings, and I'm at their staff meetings, and I'm offering their job-embedded, professional development. So I receive a lot of feedback in a lot of different capacities from classroom teachers, and it really became clear that the rubrics needed some revision, just based on the way that teachers were using them and how they were feeling they were guiding their teaching, or maybe they weren't, and that was a shame. And so that's kind of where the R&D was birthed from. So after several years of feedback from teachers. I just found this day, that was kind of funny. I never start thinking of school or start planning during the summer, said no teacher ever. I mean, we basically knew at the beginning of last school year through our work with looking at the standards that this was a real hot topic, and so it was all year like, okay, yeah, I'll put a proposal in for an R&D. So I mean, teachers were really counting on that happening and wanting to participate in an R&D to do that. So I kept it small because with this kind of work, the amount of work that really needed to happen this summer, you need the people who are really committed to wanting to be there. The less is more. It just makes it a more productive time. So I had one classroom teacher representative from each of the schools. So Chris Padgett was our representative from Memorial, looking at K&1 material. Sarah Heavey was our representative from Wheelock, and Leanne DePisa represented Dale Street. So I had a nice cross section, teachers who wanted to be there to kind of support some of this work, and we basically chopped our time into 2 parts. The first part, we just had a debrief and a brainstorm, and we named it, like, what do we love about these rubrics? Because there are some really good things about what we've been doing, like, what do we love? And then what do we not love? Like, what's holding us back? What's clunky? What's cumbersome? What's not productive? And then what do we need? Like, if we're saying we don't love these things, like, what do we need it to be instead? And I mean, I really could stay up here all night, and I'm not going to, so I feel like I'm not even really doing justice to the amount of work that happened. But I just want to show, like, the rubrics that we were using prior to 2017. It's not, you can zoom in later on if you want to, but basically you can see this is grade 3. As the grade levels increased, the density of the document increased because the expectations increased, and it was like, can you imagine, you're sitting and using this rubric for 25 pieces of writing at, 10 or 11 or 12 different indicators per piece of writing, really considering like, well, I don't know, are they a 3? Are they a 4? Then we had half points in there sometimes, like, well, maybe they're a 3.5. Like, I really can't decide. If it's not really a 3, but it's not really a 4 yet. And it just, the time that teachers are spending actually filling out the rubric was taking time away from planning, and that was like, that's not what we're about. We don't want this. And at the end of the day, they were like, we just do it to put it on your spreadsheet. Like that's not a helpful tool. We're not really using this tool to help drive our instruction. And I was like, and so we really worked well together this summer to say, like, well, what do we love? And mostly we loved that it was a consistent tool, and it said the same thing, and every grade level had to do it, and we could have common conversations at our grade level meetings. Well, we can create something like that would continue to help those conversations to happen. And so this is kind of what was birthed out of that process. It's in the same structure and format of our previous rubric, which was helpful because that's something familiar. Teachers are used to using the format, but we just really pulled back, and we made sure that it was completely standards reflected as opposed to unit reflected. And the short piece to that is that in some ways our previous rubrics felt like, well, the unit was calling the kids to do that type of work, but were the standards asking kids to be able to do that by the end of 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade? And if they weren't, then why are we taking time to decide, like, if they mastered the unit? Because we don't care if they master the unit. We care that they're mastering the standards. That's our biggest responsibility. So we just kind of implemented, we went through to make sure that all of the standards were addressed on the rubric. And what ended up happening was that we have documentation for all 3 types of writing for all 6 grade levels. We ended up coming to be able to have a tool that can be used really flexibly. So anytime kids are doing narrative writing, the teacher could pull out the narrative rubric. If it was a weekend update, they could use the narrative rubric. If they're writing a piece in their science journal for a science observation, they can use the information rubric. Like, it didn't have to just be tied to the unit. God bless you. And so that kind of just opened up a more of an awareness for what these standards are outside of our writing instructional time. So by the end of the R&D, we had a skeleton of all 18, and I've since then really made sure that they're fleshed out for teachers. So that's the end. That's the long and short of it. It's really the short of it because there is a lot. There's a lot more. There's a long of it. But it was great. So anyhow, so thank you so much for the opportunity to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Great.
Thanks, Jamie.
Last but not least, we have Orla Berry representing all science teachers 6 to 12. Go for it, Orla.
I'll be really quick because it's getting really late. And my daughter has a midterm tomorrow in genetics. She keeps texting me. She has no business being in this class. Never mind, anything else. Okay, so really quickly, actually, before I do anything really quickly, if there's any parents here, all I can say is I wish my kids went to school in this town after listening to all the teachers and all the fabulous stuff that they're doing. And what I found really interesting is the common threads through all the presentations. Everybody's talking about skills, everybody's talking about proficiency, in whatever nature takes in their disciplines. Okay, so anyway, summer R&D gives us lots of opportunities. Everybody else has said this: discovery, collaboration, design, etc. 6th grade, some of this is very exciting, some of this is more mundane. 6th grade had their exciting year last year, so this was the mundane year. I need to be able to see. I suppose I could look at this. This year they were working on a curriculum map because last year they implemented their new standards, and I know that seems contradictory to do your map afterwards, but I actually think it makes more sense because last year was the messy year. So this summer they cleaned it up, and now this year they'll go through it and probably do some more cleaning up as well. And I love this quote, a curriculum map is exactly that, a map. I sound like Nat now with my quotes. But anyway, and maps should inspire possibilities rather than limit options. And I like that idea.
They should stop and tweet it out.
Yeah, actually I tweeted Ellen out already. But I like this idea that a map shouldn't be something that sits in a closet and you never look at it again. They should be living documents, which is why we actually used Google Sheets. And we'll be able to, amend these as we see fit as we go along. So 7th grade science, we had a lot of teachers involved in R&D, it appears, this summer when I actually put this together. 7th grade science then are in their messy phase because we are rolling out the new STE curriculum in 7th grade this year, because we're not science teachers anymore now, we're science, technology and engineering teachers, it appears. And the poor middle grade science teachers are now teaching everything, where once they identified themselves as a life science teacher or a physical science teacher, now they're teaching science. Some of them teaching things they've really never interacted with before, but they're doing an awesome job. And 7th grade spent a lot of time, this was their title, which of course is so typical of Judy Silva and the rest of them, building a vibrant child-centred 7th grade science curriculum or STE curriculum. But they did a lot of work on inquiry learning, project-based learning, and standards-based reporting. So as well as implementing the new curriculum, they're implementing a new way of reporting and everything else, because it just makes sense when you're doing one to do the other, to be honest. But it's a huge amount of work, which is really why I didn't ask any of them to be here tonight, because they're busy enough. 8th grade science then is sort of preempting and getting ready for the rollout of their new frameworks. So they had already created a weather unit last summer as a result of summer R&D. So then they went back and realigned that to sort of more accurately reflect the standards and how they were going to report back to parents based on using SBR, because they're going to pilot standards-based reporting in term 2 of this year. 7th grade science, if I back up for a second, is doing a whole year of standards-based reporting to build off what 6th grade had done in the previous year. They also created a climate change unit, and I'm not going to go into this. I'm not even going to show you the videos because I think you've had enough of all of that. What I do like is the question that's going to drive their PBL unit. It's how do we prepare for the future in a world impacted by global climate change? And they have this lovely little video. That'll be their nice little driving, or sort of their hook kind of that Ellen mentioned, I think, or somebody mentioned earlier. And they've all sorts of options of things that they think the kids might investigate as a result. But they're all things you know. So this is our new science elective in 9th and 10th grade. It's called Current Issues in Science, because every other department seems to have a current issues kind of thing. No, that's not how you do it. But there's a lot going on in the world. There's global climate change, there's global climate change deniers, there's, a lot of the evolution controversy. There's, there's a lot of different things going on in the world that can be controversial or not. It could be as simple as talking about the Nobel Prize winners. It could be talking about the Cassini space probe that has now gone off into, oblivion. But talking about all the information that we gathered from it. They're investigating the newest iPhone technology. They're just doing all sorts of different things in this class. It's very topical. It's very student-driven. There's a few anchor units that were built into it, but all the rest of it is going to be very much student-driven. Something happens in the world, like, for example, right now there's a big outbreak of plague in Madagascar. So I wouldn't be surprised if they started talking about, all the different pandemics or epidemics or whatever that are ongoing around the world. And actually, Gail didn't mention that earlier, but there was another PBL unit that was mostly English-driven with a little bit of support from the science department. That'll change next year, but this year was sort of their first dabbling into it, and it's based on the bubonic plague outbreak in England in EM, I'm going to say 17 something or other. I don't remember exactly what year. But in any case, that's something they're doing. So 11th grade chemistry then had sort of the... I'm contradicting myself now, actually, because I said it makes more sense to write the map after you have gone through the actual implementation. And that is true for the middle school, but the high school's a little bit different because our content isn't really changing. The focus is changing, but the content isn't changing per se. Slightly, there's tweaks, but like 11th grade is still teaching chemistry, and there's still going to be chemistry frameworks. It's not that all of a sudden they're teaching earth science, life science, and everything else. So for them to map out those changes and sort of update their map and make it more skills-based made plenty of sense. And then last but not least, nearest and dearest to my heart, and the elementary presentation that was it Bethany did was, oh my God, fabulous with respect to this, because I said to Kim, they're doing a ton of engineering, it sounds like to me, which I need to learn more about. But in any case, so Phil spent some time this summer, Phil Brown, working on our Engineering 2 class that's coming soon to a place near you in 1819, hopefully. No, it will be. And this really, the idea is to build on the experiences that the students have already had in Engineering 1. So that's a semester-long course that the 9th and 10th graders are taking, and then this will be a year-long course for students who've already participated in Engineering 1. And I should do a nice big plug to MCPE, because they gave me a ton of money the other night to buy Lego Mindstorms kits that's going to go into the Intro to Engineering class, which is in 8th grade. So it's
And you
messy,
all got your
right?
mailing this morning.
That's right.
There you go. So it's a little messy. I mean, it sounds a little messy and chaotic, but it will all fall into place. And I think with what the elementary schools are doing too, it's really all going to fall into place and be far more streamlined. So bottom line, summer R&D lets us meet the needs of our kids. And that's me, done. I was quick.
Thank you.
So what questions do we have?
Awesome.
I'm guessing none.
Yeah.
This hour? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lola.
I just want to thank everyone for coming this evening, those of you that are here. I appreciate it. I know that it's a long day, and then presenting at night is a lot, so I appreciate it. I think, this is the third year we've done this, really highlighting the great work our teachers are doing in the summer. And I think we'll do Anna Mae's idea, we'll have a link on the website where we can look at all the different projects that were on there, so it's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much. So next item on the agenda is our wellness policy.
So this is the second reading of the wellness policy. Subcommittee met last week to look at some of the changes that were recommended by the leadership team the week before. We have Kathy and Susan here to answer any questions. They were integral in developing this policy with the wellness group. They're also here to talk to you a little bit about SBIRT, which is a screening that we're required to do now. And we've been planning for it for a couple of years and got some grant money around it, but now it's time to implement. So I guess first we'll take the wellness piece. If you have any questions on that with them, or
Would anybody like a copy of the wellness policy? We'll put some right up here. This is the draft, if you're interested and want to follow along.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
go for it. So this is something that this group has worked on for a couple of years now, and I think, a couple of the key points that are in there, we try to really continue to have a culture of wellness, in whether it's nutrition, activity, making sure that our kids during the day are active. I think one of the big ones that we addressed in this policy was not making sure that kids aren't held in from recess. They still get that activity, they can go out, not even a portion of recess for this kind of, for punishment or anything. It's they go out, they run, they enjoy their recess. We still have the recess before school, and again, not all can participate based on the bus schedule, but we have about 70% of our kids doing that, which is a nice change. And then we have our typical traditional recess after lunch. So that was really important to us, and we addressed some of the fundraising issues that have come up in the years past, the parties, the healthy snacks, all those kinds of things. So I think they've done a really wonderful job with it, and I know the subcommittee made some recommendations that are in that draft, so if there's any questions, please ask them now. If not, we can go forward on it.
The one thing and I know we want to wrap it up, but I thought that fundraising for the candy bars is kind of funny, because it does happen. But I'm not going to.
We're addressing that. No, it's interesting. So we've had that conversation. Actually, tonight we had it again during the break. Is that we've notified the folks that are running those fundraisers that are historically candy bar, and even though they say they're not supposed to sell during the day, indications are that does happen. So
My
we just
son
need
is
to.
selling them during the
So we just need
day.
to make sure that doesn't.
Right.
And make some changes around that.
But I suppose the big theme is really moderation. It's not like anything. Because if we say don't do I don't know.
So I think the big idea is really that you send your kids to school, you want them to be in a safe environment. And safety has a lot of different meanings. You want them to be comfortable and safe and healthy. You want to create a healthy environment. We wouldn't want to be blowing in bad fumes. We wouldn't want to have any type of toxic environment. And while, of course, candy is fun and enjoyable and in and of itself is not a problem, it's something that we feel like shouldn't be really provided by the schools or through the schools. That's a family decision. And I've had kids also who had to sell 50 candy bars.
60.
60 candy bars,
60,
you know,
yeah.
at a time. And of course, the quickest way to do that is to carry it around school. And so, I mean, we've all kind of experienced that, and we know what it's really like. And we would love to see that not happen during school.
And just to touch on ESPERT substance assessment, just pass that down. This is a craft tool. We've been talking about it for a couple of years in Medfield. This year it is now state mandated, just like we check hearing and vision and heights and weights in kids. We'll be doing a substance use assessment with 1 grade in middle school and 1 grade in the high school. It's looking like 7th grade and 9th grade.
As part of the opioid law?
It is part of the opioid law. And we'll be doing it because of the wellness schedule. We'll be starting the very end of November with half of the 9th grade students and do the other half in the spring. There's been several towns, for instance, Natick and Wilmington have been doing this. This will be their 4th year. So there's lots of data out there. If you look, if you want to just pass those.
Oh, sure.
If we look at our data from the Metro West survey with, you know, lots of issues with our kids, and then you look at the data with kids that answer these craft questions, pretty much the majority of kids, probably 95% of them, will not be telling the truth when they answer this assessment. And we know that going in, but the real crux of this is that we're meeting with kids, we're telling them that these are your resources, we are support people, this is not something that's going to get you in trouble, it's a confidential environment. A lot of back and forth with who would do this assessment. In lots of towns it's the PE teachers, some it's the guidance teachers. The majority of towns that have done it, the nurses do it. And I think I think first of all, with anybody with a clinical license, that confidentiality piece is already built in. Some of the administrators and certainly guidance counselors have a different take on some of this information that comes in. Really, if a child comes in and is sharing this with us, unless they're in imminent danger, we're not going to be calling their parents or calling an ambulance, or that would be the only time that we would break confidentiality and we would share that with kids. We would try and get them if kids screen positive, which when we look at the other towns that have done this, it's about 1% of the kids that will screen out positive that you'll do additional assessments with or referral to guidance. And with that, you generally will be getting the student's permission before you do that. What this generally does is it's just, identifying you as a resource, and it's usually that 1 or 2 kids that really were looking for help that then will say, yes, I'm doing this and I do need some guidance with it. So it'll be brand new for us this year. I'm sure our statistics will be very similar to the 9 towns that are doing this regularly. But, it's a new thing. I think it'll be a very positive thing, just another resource for our kids.
So this is each kid, how does it happen?
Each student will be individually screened. So
you just set up an appointment with them individually?
We're going to do it during their wellness classes, and there's 4 nurses that have gone through 4 of the state screenings. I've actually done them all twice because I did have a hard time with this initially, thinking it doesn't seem very authentic for me if you look at the back that, if a kid is telling you that, yes, indeed, they're doing all this, you're saying, well, it's really good that you're not doing this. When indeed, any substance use is really an issue for our young kids. It's nice that we'll have lots of resources with us, what a brain looks like with somebody who regularly uses alcohol
But
versus...
do you take
want us to
like
back
a
up?
kid from wellness and bring them to
Right,
the
we're going to
desk?
have the kids, the reason, in addition to the fact that it's related to their wellness, it's a wellness screening tool, we want to have them engaged in a group activity where students will leave class, go with the nurse, they'll walk down the hall together, and they'll build a little connection, a relationship right then. And they'll start to have a conversation, they'll get to their meeting spot, wherever that's going to take place, interview location, and they'll just have a personal conversation. So the wonderful thing is the kids are going to be talking to someone who's a clinician in the district, who's a medical professional, who's reaching out to them and saying, we care about you, we just want to ask you a couple questions. And, as Kathy mentioned, it's a confidential conversation. They're not going to write anything down.
So each kid will know that their turn will be coming.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent.
And we should be able to get through it pretty quickly in 3 or 4 days. again, it'll be the 2 high school nurses, the middle school nurse and myself doing it. And I've had lots of kids come back, even, college kids come back and ask me for referrals. I think most of the kids see the nurses as, good resource people, so I think it'll be a good first attempt at that.
Do you give the parents a heads up that this is happening?
Yes, there's a parent letter that will go out
Okay, cool.
beforehand, and the kids also will get a heads up. And they're also asked, parents can opt out, just like parents can opt out of having, their kids have vision and hearing screening, so that letter will go out. But the kids can opt out of it. Very few kids in the other towns really do. It's about 1%. But we'll be asking them, are you, is it okay for me to ask you a few questions? And then explain the confidentiality piece.
Okay, good.
It's new.
It's new.
I'll give you a report when we're done. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So does anyone have any questions about the wellness policy? Because we need to take a vote tonight.
I appreciate getting it in red line, though. Thank you. We approve the changes to the wellness policy.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to just mention on the wellness policy, just 2 quick things. I think there was some agreement at a prior school committee meeting that the drafts were going to be posted on the website for the public to see before they were voted on. And I know that I looked today and they weren't up, so I just thought I would mention that before they were.
I move to table the wellness policy. We'll take it up at the next meeting. We'll put it up.
And then the other thing I was just going to suggest on this is on number 11, you may want to include the school-sponsored event can sometimes be, you might want to broaden that a little bit. We had wonderful support when we did Spaghetti with Santa last year from the school nurses when we had a child with a severe allergy. And it would be nice to be able to sort of push the other parent-run organizations to seek out the support or the advice of the school nurses. And for number 11 as well, just ask them to consult with you guys in that instance. The nurses were great on that, and I just think it's a smart thing to do.
And most of the organizations do that. And we have, the PTO, all the nurses speak at all the coffees and go over all the allergies. And that's become really tightened up in the past few years, which is really important.
Yeah, you guys are fantastic.
Both to keep kids safe, but also to keep kids included, so that everybody's included in those events.
I think it's just a little tricky when you have so many volunteers working on an event. Not everybody's thinking about the task at hand and not thinking about, gee, I should talk to the school nurses and make sure that this child is going to be safe. So you guys are
and we
great
do look at the
resources.
calendar, and most of the nurses are calling.
Great.
I move that we table the policy. Are we under a deadline now?
No.
I move that we table it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just on that point before when we bring it back, I actually think I'd be uncomfortable implementing a policy that applied to groups that we don't control. So.
Okay. Madam Chair, we have no donations this meeting, which are our next item.
Okay, so let's move on to the superintendent's report to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mentioned to you a little earlier we're going to table the cleargov.com presentation. We'll do that at our next meeting. So just a couple of updates that we have. Social Emotional Task Force update. So I've met with Susan and David today, actually, and we're looking at some of the folks that want to participate in that. We had a great response from parents and teachers and administrators and students, so it's a really good response. Over 40 parents volunteered to be on this, probably the same amount of teachers as well, so we're going through those right now, and we're going to be notifying folks probably next Monday or Tuesday. So we originally had a kickoff date for November 2nd, but there were some conflicts with that, so we've now changed the kickoff to November 7th, which is a Tuesday, in this room at 3:30, so we're looking forward to that. But a lot of great people with really diverse backgrounds have submitted applications to us, so we're going to get some work done, which is great. Medfield Coalition for Suicide Prevention, so that came out of really just an email invitation from Youth Outreach and others, and Anime, you were part of that as well. Just trying to get folks in the community together to talk a little bit about suicide prevention and where we're going with it. We've had two really successful meetings. It's actually going to be a subset of MCAP at this point. And they set up a GoFundMe page at the last meeting to try to get some revenue together to do a strategic plan and hire someone to do that. So again, a really engaged group of people that want to do some really good work for our community. And we've worked with Riverside as part of that to facilitate this process with us, which has been great. Riverside's coming in December to do some training of our staff on suicide prevention as well. So I don't know, Anna Mae, if you want to add anything else, but it's been a very positive experience so far.
Yeah, I think this ties in with the initiative, the social emotional learning, the task force. I mean, this is a big not just a school issue, but a community issue, and you're going to mention the interface as well. So I feel very hopeful that key community members are coming together, these women here, and professionals. So I'm grateful that we're working on this.
So continuing our theme of mental health awareness and interface meeting updates. So we had our meeting with stakeholders with Interface a couple of weeks ago. There were members of school committee, police chief, folks from Medfield Youth Outreach, our guidance staff, principals. So we had a lot of folks there that go over what this service is going to be like for our community. Very positive meeting. We've signed the contract. We're starting and going live on November 1st. So they're helping us with some information now so we can get the word out to our parents, our community, and then the community at large, because it's not just a school service, it's a community service. So
Jeff, can you give a small nugget of exactly what
Sure.
Interface is? Because there are people here.
Yep, I did it in the past, but I'll do it again, no problem. So Interface is going to be a mental health service, a mental health phone call you can make, service provider to hook you up with whatever service you need. Instead of going through your doctor, your primary, and waiting 2, 3, 4 weeks for service, all Interface does is align people with the correct services they need in mental health. So we're looking forward to that. Many districts and many towns have that service, and November 1st we're finally going live on that, so that's going to be great. In your packet, you had a timeline that was tentative for the Director of Student Services search, in which we were looking at possibly posting that position in December and getting into the actual interview process and getting the committee together in January and hopefully appointing a couple months later. We've discussed, I think last time, I know the group that was in the search last time talked about looking at a search firm, and instead of having a homegrown search, maybe have an outside firm do that and they can get additional candidates. I don't know how you folks feel about that, but that's something that certainly we can look into if that's something that you would like me to look, go in that direction. So it would be similar to what they do for superintendent search, or I know when Westwood did their Director of Student Services search 3 years ago, they hired a firm to do it. So sometimes you can get cast a broad net to different folks that may not apply. They can call folks that are currently in positions, which I can't do. So it's something to think about. I'm certainly willing to do it.
I just have a concern, given, the issues we face with unforeseen budget expenses coming up. We already had to fund an additional position this year that wasn't in the budget. And
correct.
I mean, I have a concern about, throwing this into the budget when I think most districts do this on their own, and we certainly have the capacity to do it on our own.
We certainly do.
Sorry.
No, please. I think we're probably going to say somewhere around the same thing, but you contribute and then.
Yes, so when I think about these kinds of things, I think, all right, what are the pros, what are the cons? Cons is definitely money, but what are the pros? The pros is Jeff doesn't have an assistant superintendent. He's got 5 billion things on his plate. Last year we went down this road doing it ourselves, and not because it was his fault, but it kind of fell apart. We still don't have a Director of Student Services. So that was in one of my pro columns. And 2, I think, when we had the focus group before this, when we were crafting the strategic plan, the parents came in droves regarding special education. So I think this is such a critical role for our school district and moving forward in a positive manner that I think this would not only signify to our population that this is an important role, but that you know, we can also tap into other folks that we normally can't tap into.
I guess I feel like also if we are able to spread a wider net and we truly get the person that we want, because everything I've heard from you and from the school committee over the years, even before I was here, was how important it was to get somebody who could not just do the job, but had already done the job of improving special ed services and pupil services already. That they had come in and there wasn't a huge learning curve around that. I think to worry about the amount of money that this would cost in the short term is a little penny wise and pound foolish, because a really truly experienced SPED director and pupil services director can really focus on how we best serve kids, and sometimes that's not as much outplacement. Sometimes that is having people in the district where kids are not being separated from their community if we don't have the service here. I mean, I think that there are ways that we can really look at integrating all of our kids into the community as much as possible. And that is something that requires experience and requires taking a really good look at what we do.
I agree. I think that where the special education component of our strategic plan is such a huge, and we've identified it as a priority in our strategic plan, that I think it's an efficient use of money, and I don't think it is a foolish use of our resources to make that a priority. We've identified it as a priority, and not that it wasn't before, but I think maybe a different approach is always good. You know, you did it one way, for whatever reasons, that way didn't work. Not to say that this way will work either. I think that's what Chris is trying to say, that there are no guarantees. I think that the community at large, and us included, need to understand that just because we do it this way doesn't mean we're going to get, you know, the most amazing. It could end with the same results, and I think that's probably, not to speak for you because you're certainly quite eloquent, but I think that what we want to caution is that you could end with the same results, but I think a different approach and a new set of eyes, or just a different approach, might be a really wise use of money.
I mean, I can support a motion to get proposals. I still need to be convinced that it would make a meaningful difference. I don't think it's going to take a lot of work off the administration's plate, and I'm not sure that it would, at the end of the day, make a meaningful difference. But you know, I'm happy to support a motion to get proposals if somebody has one.
Does someone want to? Oh, you have a motion?
I do. I move that we authorize the superintendent to explore the use of a search firm in connection with the Director of Student Services position, and if necessary, to solicit formal proposals for consideration at our next regularly scheduled meeting, and to take other actions as may be required by procurement laws. And Francine, I'll get this to you.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I'll have something for you on the 6th.
Yeah, I don't know if you can, if it needs to be put out to bid, if you can get somebody back in with proposals by then, or
At
if
least
it's
I'll
under
get a
that,
sense
if
of
it's
what
under
it-
that threshold.
I'll make some calls, and then we'll know pretty quickly if it's easy to go out to bid, so.
Okay.
All right.
And the bid threshold's 10,000?
10,000, Mike? What's that?
15?
So just for everyone, if
I think
it
we'll be
comes
okay.
under 15, you don't need to put it out for bid if it comes under 15,000, but if any of the information comes back over 15,000, you have to send it out to bid from multiple companies.
And I just think, you know, one thing that we should remember, to Chris's point, is that the only reason why we don't have a full-time director now is because the person that was selected by the committee was outbid by our current district, you know, more than we could pay her. So, I mean,
Well, it didn't even really give us a chance to counter bid, because, you know, which I don't blame, you know, that's what employers do.
That's
I
what
do
they
it
do.
too. But
especially in that position. I mean, there's,
Right.
you know, there's a,
we did it more than once when Matt was in that position, so.
yeah. Okay. And just district recognition, I have a few things I want to share. just want to congratulate our grade 7 students and teachers for another great Nature's Classroom. Very successful. Once again, our kids were wonderful. Great learning experience for them, and the week seems to go by quickly for those of us that aren't there. But I think it was another great success. It was a great time for all. I want to just recognize Donna Meany. So Donna Meany has been in our IT department for many years, and as of, was it today, Moen?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, she is retiring. So tomorrow's her birthday, and she's retiring. So I just want to thank her for all of her hard work over the years. You know, Donna is the one that had to do all of the EPUMs and SIMs and all that data stuff, you know, which is arduous, and she's done a great job with that. So just want to thank her. She certainly will be missed. And just Medfield Talks is coming up tomorrow night. We have Challenge Success coming, doing a presentation on the balanced student. So I'm going to send out a reminder email tomorrow to all parents, and also remind them of the Superintendent Parent Advisory on Wednesday as well. So we're going to get that word out. But I think so far the RSVPs have been pretty positive, so looking forward to a good crowd tomorrow night. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, we can go down the list. Do you have any?
Yeah.
You need to get home and study.
Just woke him up.
Sorry, yeah, please hurry up. I need to study.
Since the last meeting, the council held their freshman elections and went through the walk-on process, so we have a complete council for the whole year. Last Friday, the executive board, we went to an officer shop at Holy Cross with all the other executive boards in the state, and we went to leadership workshops led by the MASC executive board members. In the school this week, it's our Spirit Week. Today we had Decade Day.
Farmer Day tomorrow.
Farmer Day.
Day.
Right. And that's leading up to the Spirit Dance, which will be after the football game on Friday. Last year was the first year we held it, and we're hoping to increase attendance as we hold the event each year. And then a look to November, which is kind of our grand month. We have the bocce tournament, which is held by the Special Olympics. Last year we brought, say, about 20 members from the council to the event, just to cheer. This year we're talking with the outreach program, and we're trying to bring participants to the event along with the council this year. And then we have our can drive, where we work with the Medfield Food Cupboard, the Powder Puff football game, and Pep Rally, which are kind of our big three which are coming up.
Excellent.
Yeah. Good for me.
Thanks, James.
I don't have anything.
Nothing further.
All I want to do is do a plug for voting tomorrow at the center. Although that is not school-related, it is certainly school-related because all politics is local, and this is somebody who will be advocating for our town in terms of Chapter 70 and town reimbursements as well. So it's a small audience now by 10 o'clock, but
Yeah, but I mean, people at home.
and
Right.
the people at home who are hanging on our every word at 10 o'clock.
I just want to say something about that interface meeting, that the resource that is coming to the district is phenomenal. I didn't even realize that, you know, there are times that families can wait weeks for services. And I think that, you know, that might not sound bad if you have, you know, some kind of small issue, but when you have something as significant as a mental health crisis, that is an eternity for families. So the difference that this can be such a quick turnover, it could be 2 days. So that's amazing for
Maybe 2
families.
hours.
Yeah, exactly. That the time frame is so significantly reduced is such a huge thing for our district. So.
And those 2 hours or 2 days are to the right person, not just
Yes.
the person you can
Right.
get to.
Exactly,
Because I
that
think
it's very
that's what happens with
specialized.
mental
That's a
health
good
a lot
point.
of the time, too.
Right.
They match who you need, so that's perfect.
Right, exactly. They do a whole intake call and match people with exactly the specialty that family needs and that person needs. So I think that is a huge step in such a positive direction for all our families. So And on that note, our future agenda items will include the superintendent's goals and our student activity policy, as well as our wellness policy.
Can I just add one thing?
Sure.
So one of the things that we'll add to is update on MCAS. So we had a conference call, excuse me, on Friday, which was the first time that we really got a lot of information about what the new MCAS is going to be and the results, in which the commissioner spoke to us, superintendents. I had the whole leadership team there, and we participated in that. There's going to be a lot of changes in the reporting, and what they're telling us is that only 50% of the students in the state met the expectations of the test. And it's a very, very rigorous test that looks at critical thinking and applying knowledge versus just rote memory. So they are going to be public. We got the results today. I can't talk about them until they're embargoed till Wednesday. And then they're going to release to the press, the statewide results released to the press, I think tomorrow night at 12:01. And then Wednesday is when everything goes live in terms of news and articles. So I think there's going to be some surprises statewide, I think, in terms of what the results look like. But, I'll be able to speak more to it at a November meeting and give you a good sense. But just the categories themselves are different. There's no more advanced, proficient. None of that is there. So fortunately, we got into Park when we did to get a good sense of what it was like, because it is really Park-like, what they've done, and actually very close to what the national exam is. The national exam, they showed us, they sent us a slide that showed what the results are statewide for 2017, and then they showed what our results were in the NAEP test, the national test, and they're almost identical. And they showed last year's 2016 and 2015 MCAS, and it's not even close. So it's a much more rigorous test, and I'll share that information with you at our November meeting. But you'll see it in the press this week. It'll be out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm sure. I'm sure I'll get phone calls from the press on that, just reactions, because of just the way they came out. So.
Okay, on that, is there a motion to adjourn? Our next meeting is Monday, November 6th. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Aye. Aye. Excellent.